he was raised in Hungary, and he didn't go his schooling was very limited because he was one of the key people to work on a farm. And his brother, youngest brother, Max, which was Uncle Max, and he got a full education, and in those days they taught you mechanics and stuff like that, like industrial stuff. So he got a good education as far as that was concerned. And then my father worked on a farm, and they had a dairy farm, and they raised cows, and they had other farm animals. And his father also had a tavern off the road, and he also had this. So they were fairly well off. In fact, I got a picture. I used to have a picture of the house they lived in, which looked like it was like a two-story building. It wasn't just a normal house. But anyway, he had I think like 5 sisters and 5 brothers. And as far as I remember, the brothers that survived that came to this country was my Uncle Morris, that was my father's brother, older brother. And then my father's younger brother was, I thought it was, his younger brother was Max Friedman. And they're talking about Friedman. Their name was not Friedman, their name was Isaac, which translated from Hungary to English is Isaac. And that was their real name till he came to this country. When he came, he was the second one or the third one to come to this country. And when he came, his older brother, Morris, had to come by the name of Friedman. And my father came by the name of Isaac. And so the 2 brothers decided, why have 2 different names? They decided on Friedman. Sounds better than Isaac. So that's how that happened. And then they lived in New York, and that's where my Uncle Morris, the youngest one, met Cecil, and they couldn't get married because the older sister has to get married first. So my aunt, my mother, was fixed up with my father, Eugene, and then they got married, and then my Aunt Lena, Aunt Lena, not Lena. Yeah, I'm getting confused with names. Cecil, that's right. My Aunt Cecil was eligible to get married to her boyfriend, who was Uncle
Max?
Uncle Max, right. And so they got married after that. And, that's where I would now backtrack and go to my father, where he was raised on this farm. And then when the First World War broke out, they were drafting. In those days, they didn't send you a letter, you're drafted. They sent a soldier on horseback with a cart, and they saw boys on the street get in the cart because you're going in the army. So anyway, I laugh about that, but because my father's mother, which was my grandmother, of course, hid my father in the attic so he wouldn't get drafted. And then the neighbor lady saw what was happening, so she squealed and told them there's somebody hiding in the attic. So that's how my father got drafted in the army.
Okay.
And then when he was in the army, and he had training, and they had pretty rough training. They lived on bread and water, basically. And then when it was, this happened to be in Hungary, and they were getting shipped to Italy because they were fighting the Italians. And the Italians were on the First World War on the American side. My father happened to be on the German side, and so anyway, he was in training, and then they were going to go to the front, and my father was trying to avoid that, so he signed up for some more training, which happened to be, which he didn't want to do, was digging up landmines. So, so after that, he was trying to just to go to the front, so he signed up for another job instead, and he didn't know what it was, but it turned out to be a machine gunner. He would man these big machine guns in those days, in 1916 or whatever that year was, and he became a gunner on a machine gun, and they were sent off to Italy. And one particular battle that he was in that he told me about, well, before they were going, they were shelling the roads, and he avoided getting hit by one of those shells because he stopped to rest and let the other guy behind him go ahead. And that's when a mortar came down and landed on this guy that he gave to replace. So otherwise he would have got blown up. But anyway, when they got to the front lines, they were on the side of a hill, and then the Italians were coming down the road, and then he had to machine gun anybody that, not only him, but whoever else was manning a machine gun. And what they didn't know, on the other side of the hill there were more Italians, and they went up the hill and they started to shoot down at my father. And that's where this kind of ends, because my father had to cover those guys, his men, while they were running back. And how my father got back without getting scratched, I'll never know. And anyway, that's part of the war that I when he came back after the war, when he was in Italy, he told him the war was over, go home. Well, he had to find his way home. This isn't like they put you on a train or something. He had to walk back home to where he lived, and then when he got back, that's when he decided to come to the United States. And his brother I told you that part where when he got to the United States, he changed his name from Eugene to Friedman.
I remember hearing this line where he kissed the ground when he came back.
Oh yeah, he thought the United States was heaven on earth compared to the way it was in Hungary, and he thought this was the land of not only free but also like heaven. To him, it was like heaven. And I told you the part where how he got married and everything, and that's where I come into the picture. I was the youngest son. My sister is 2.5 years older than me, and I remember him going into business, in a produce business, and he was with 2 other guys. He bought a truck and hauled produce for 2 other stores besides his store. And he would start out the day working from, he would get up like 3 in the morning and get home around 8 o'clock at night, and be working the truck and his store. And what else? We moved from New York because we hadn't seen his brother in, I don't know, 17 years. And his brother talked him into coming to Gary, and this was already the Second World War was going on, and it was hard to find a place to live, in Gary, Indiana. So anyway, he came here and he found a store that he bought, and in 3 years, the business during the war was so good that he was able to pay everything off in 3 years, the building, the store, and everything in 3 years. And of course, I grew up at that time. And my sister, when she came to Gary, she only had 1 year of high school left to go, and so she had to leave all her friends. So she missed out on graduating in New York, so she graduated in Gary, Indiana, and that's how that was another part of the story. That's I'm trying to think of some other stuff. Also, my father. Listen, wait a second. I got to know the Pisley family through Bill Pisley, and Melvin, his oldest brother, asked me to introduce my sister to him. So I remember going up to my sister and said, this Melvin Pisley wants to be introduced to you. You don't want to introduce because I thought she was too good.
Oh, really?
So anyway, my sister said, what do you mean? I want to be introduced. So I introduced them, and eventually they got married. And it was, as far as Melvin goes, he was a very likable type person. He